happen.
We'll bring James into the conversation. Cabrera's at 506. He's the closest. Nelson Cruz is at 459. And again, I don't know how to rank these by age. Like Stanton's 371. There's Votto. There's Mike Trout at 338. I don't know where Aaron Judge is. I'm scrolling. I must have passed him because I'm scrolling way down this list. James, we welcome in our 1320 Kings insider, James Ham, creator of the Kings Beat. And why wouldn't we open with a baseball question?
If anybody can do it, it's Stanton.
Do you think anyone gets the 700 home runs? After, if Pujols does it, do you think anyone else can?
Yeah, I mean, Trout is a guy that if he stays healthy, there's potential. Just because he's been so consistent. You know, I think people forget, like, if you look at what Hank Aaron did, he didn't have 50 and 60 home run seasons. He had 40 every single season. And Trout is one of those guys that when he is healthy, he knocks the cover off the ball, but he's so consistent. And that's what you're kind of looking for. Some of these young guys coming up might be able to do it, but we're just in a different era. These guys are, I've talked about it so many times, they're so yoked. And that seems like it's such a good thing, and you're hitting the ball so far and all that stuff. But that's also really tough to maintain as you hit 32, 33, 34, 35. You start running out of gas and your flexibility goes away. And so, I don't know. I think we're going to see a little bit of a slide here, but it's not like 300 wins. Like, we won't see another pitcher get 300 wins probably ever again. I think we'll see players get up to 650, 700 home runs.
It's as we always show love and respect for the greatest baseball player of all time, Barry Bonds. He actually, James, did about what you talk about with Hank Aaron. We talked about this the other day when we went down the list of his home run totals. He has the 173 year. That's really, I don't think he hit over 50 outside of that. He was 40, high 30s, things of that nature for the entirety of his career. Even to the point where in his final year, we talk about Albert Pujols and what he's done this year. I think what was in Bond's final year, 43 years old, so he had 28 home runs.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to take is somebody that can put up 40 for the majority of their career, and in the final 2 or 3 still hit about 20 to 25.
Yeah, I mean, it's about longevity, and we're not even seeing a lot of players come up, at 19, 20 years old. On occasion. But, I mean, there was a different era where, younger players were making it to the league. Remember Ken Griffey Jr. coming up so young.
His numbers are I have his pulled up right now. His numbers, because we were this was born, James, when we were talking about, like, there would just, like, the 73, there would just be numbers that pop out of nowhere for some of these home run hitters. And that includes Roger Maris, by the way. Yeah. But, like, you look at Griffey, it's 45, 40, 17 in an injury-shortened season, then 49, 56, 56, 48, and 40. Yeah. That's insane.
Yeah. I mean, Albert Bell, like, he had a bunch of seasons in a row. Manny Ramirez, these are guys that, like, there were moments in their career where you would take their stats up against anyone. I think Pujols is the guy, like, there's a 10-year stretch where I don't know that any player in the game has ever been as good on the offensive side as Albert Pujols.
Wow. 10 straight seasons, 30-plus home runs for Manny Ramirez. He hit 27, and then 33, 36. Man.
I know.
That boy, Manny Ramirez, I forgot.
I know he got popped with something, too, so that clouds everything, but Manny was cold. Matter of fact, I think like 2 weeks ago, there was a video of him hitting a home run like 2 weeks ago. I think he's in Japan or something like that. They hit a bomb somewhere. Yeah, he hit a bomb somewhere. I think he's 50 or something like that.
Yeah, it's the guys that you kind of feel bad for that are in a different era that, they kind of finish up in this era. But, guys like Fred McGriff, who, just were so consistently good. He ends up with 493 homers. So he's just right on the bubble. But, talk about a guy who hit 30 home runs forever. And he's a guy that, like, we're talking about 8 or 9 100 RBI seasons. but he wasn't really in that same era. Like he was partially, but he didn't take that step. You could tell he didn't get huge and start like hitting 50, 60 homers a year, but the consistency was there for a guy like that.
Mark McGwire hit 29 his last year. 37 years old.
49 his first year.
No,
as a rookie. Yeah.
No.
But that's the year where the ball was jumping off the bat. So I think it was George Bell and him both hit right around 49, and Andre Dawson hit 47 out of nowhere.
Hawk. That was my guy.
Yeah,
that was a juice
McGwire
ball.
was killing them coming into the league. 49, 32, 33, 39, 22, which is the total odd number, and then 42 before a couple of injury shortened seasons.
Yeah, but his batting average just kept going down.
McGwire, the question.
It sure did.
Yeah.
The question with McGwire, though, has always been the juice, though. Because if you talk about 87 and everything, I mean, that's prime Bash Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And Jose was like, this is what we were doing. You know what I mean? Like, so and it's crazy, too, because I don't remember, but I've looked back and seen Mark McGwire just naturally was a beast. Naturally was a beast. You know what I'm saying? And
McGwire, just like there's a skinny Barry Bonds.
Yeah. But he was tall, he was powerful. Like it felt like we don't know what was going on, but it felt like just naturally he's this great power hitter. And it feels like he didn't need that type of stuff, but
If you look at him and Maris, they're both like that gigantic stature. Even like McGwire as a young player, there was a big slope to his shoulders. His legs were huge, but his upper body wasn't huge. It wasn't until we got to 6 years in that you started seeing the gun show, which, again, being around Major League Baseball players, still to me, it's it's stunning. Comparing those guys to NBA guys, it's just there isn't a dude at your gym that's as yoked as a second baseman in Major League Baseball. So it's just a totally different feel, what they do. Again, you get to the NFL and those guys are, baseball players, but add on 40 pounds. And sometimes a lot more than that. But baseball players are just a different breed for sure.
Hell, Gabe Kapler looks like he could win Mr. California today.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned basketball. I guess we can segue to basketball now after talking about baseball players.
Either way, I don't care. It's fine.
Oh no, we can go to basketball. I just wanted to forgive me, Damien. I don't know if there's a perfect time to do this, but on my in-studio TV is the FIBA tournament or whatever that's going on right now. Team USA is playing, and you want to talk about guys that maybe only Kenny Caraway remembers. I mean, we've got Jordy Meeks playing out there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick McCaw is out there playing. Jeremy Pargo. You guys remember Jeremy Pargo? He got a brother. I don't know if it's Jeremy. Which is the one that played at Gonzaga? You guys remember him, the little point guard Pargo?
Yeah, I can't remember though.
He's out there, and
Meeks is the Kentucky kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Robert Woodard out there?
I haven't seen him. However, the reason why I really want to bring this up, point guard out there, Frank Mason.
Yeah. Frank Mason.
He's out there. So this is crazy. They're qualifying. These guys are qualifying for the real team to play. Is that what's going on here? These guys aren't playing in the FIBA World Championships, are they?
No, this is okay. So there's a difference. There's EuroBasket going on right now, and what I think you're watching is qualifiers for the Olympics or qualifiers for something else.
So this is, as I look at it, this is America Cup.
Yeah, it's America Cup. So it's going to be the Americas, South America. You're going to get some Canadian teams. You might get Argentina in there, stuff like that.
Yeah. Due to Mexico right now.
World Cup is next month, isn't it? Or is it this month?
Which one? Soccer?
No, isn't that what the World Championships are called? Are they called?
I thought it was next year. I
No,
thought it was
no.
next
This
year.
right now is EuroBasket. It's the Euro Cup.
What's happening? Something's happening this month. At least it is for the women, because I know one of the coaches. Maybe it's not maybe it's to qualify for next year.
Yeah, I think it's qualifiers. I think that's why. And like, if you looked at the initial roster, and people in the chatty house here, it's Gennaro Pargo. That's the other Pargo. Yeah, but
One of them was married
Joe
to
we have here.
one of them was married to Portia, right? On Basketball Wives.
oh,
I
What are
think
we
it was.
I
That's
have
who it
no
was. It
idea.
was one of the Pargo. I can't
The
remember.
bottom of the kid we were talking about from Marquette is Desmond Howard's brother or not? Did we get to the bottom of that?
I have no
I don't
idea.
think we did. I don't think we got to the bottom of the Desmond Howard's brother. Those are
That's funny. Yeah, it's World Cup qualifiers. That's what you're seeing. And like the initial roster that came out, there was like 14 former Kings. Like Eric Micah is on that
Oh
roster,
man, I remember.
which he's a stud. I still don't get why he can't make it in the league. But it was like Gabe Vincent and like it was just like one guy after another. Maybe it wasn't Gabe Vincent. It was it'll come to me. Anyway, like half of the Stockton Kings roster from the last 3 years was on that initial roster before they pared it down. I'm not sure who they brought it with them, but I'm not surprised Frank Mason. Frank Mason's just a guy that he's basically the equivalent of a 4A minor league player. Like he just can't quite get over the hump.
Frank Mason was backcourt of the future for the Kings, if I remember correctly. Mark my words.
Yeah, Mark, my man's words.
Frankie Mason, baby. Hammer. Donovan Mitchell was traded yesterday. Not sure if you've heard. Donovan Mitchell traded was yesterday. Two different things to discuss here. Let's talk about the actual trade without manufacturing Kings talk. Impact of Donovan Mitchell on the Cleveland Cavaliers in your mind?
I mean, it makes them really, really interesting this year, and 2 years from now, it makes them one of the best teams in basketball.
Okay.
So, I mean, that's where I would put them. I mean, you gotta wait for the natural progression of Evan Mobley and of Isaac Okoro, and even like Garland is fun, but like to go from fun to being like on a winning team and great on a winning team, that's different. I think it's a tremendous move. Like I thought it was like a major swing for the fence, but like a really safe swing that you can always go get your money back out of if you need to, if it doesn't work out after year one, or if he just says, look, I don't want to be here. Why would you trade me to Cleveland? But I don't think we're having that conversation right now. And I think they're going to be the most fun young team that we'll have in the league for the next couple of years.
I thought about you last night with all this going on, James, and I wanted to see what you have to say. Is this deal that Cleveland was able to pull off, was this the one that gave you pause to the Kings giving up what they did for Kevin Huerter? Because you said if I have it correct, they are not able to do something like this because of the protections on the pick that they trade to Atlanta. They can't do this. Is this kind of what you were referring to, something like this?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. But I mean, do the Kings have the ability to make that deal? Like, can you go? Like, you didn't have a Colin Sexton to throw in. You didn't have a Lauri Markkanen to throw in. You could have done something with like Davion Mitchell, but it's whether or not Utah would have liked the pick, would have liked the offer. I certainly think if again, the Kings could have done something wacky like given up an unprotected pick, called Atlanta, said, hey, can we just unprotect the pick but make it 2025, and then given up their 23, their 27, and their 29 first-round picks, and then a couple of pick swaps as well, and gone all in. But that would have been, I mean, that's pinning all your hopes to one group of players, and your draft picks would basically outlast almost every single player under contract. So that would make it a little bit difficult. It's sort of what I talk about, like when you say, hey, they're not able to do certain things because of the Huerter trade. And it's not, again, that I hate the Huerter trade. It's just that you took yourself out of the running for certain things without having to jump through a bunch of hoops and actually give up more value to someone else in order to do something.
Oh, but from the perspective of what Cleveland gave up, this is a great deal for them, right?
It could be a great deal,
and especially when you look at that was leading the witness. Sorry, Your Honor, because in my mind I'm thinking comparing that to the New York Knicks deal and the one that all of the ESPN people are flying off the handle about. I look at that New York Knicks deal and I go, man, Knicks fans, you're clamoring for them to have given up more than that after you saw what they gave up, after you saw what Cleveland gave up. Like, man, that's tough. I just don't get the reaction to the Knicks deal when I see that Cleveland, like, man, Cleveland kept their entire core intact. It was clear Colin Sexton didn't have a place on the Cavs anymore. Like, they kept their entire core intact with this move.
Yeah, totally. And even if you look at Lauri Markkanen that was traded in that move, like, he becomes a player that, again, could get moved again. That could be shifted straight to another team for another first-round pick. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to accumulate assets as quickly as possible. It's like what I've talked about with Harrison Barnes. If you were to throw in Harrison Barnes into a move like that, the beauty of Harrison Barnes is, yeah, he's a really good player, but he's also a player you can go turn around and flip for another first-round pick. Even if it's a 2025 or a 2024, you can still get that out of him if you were a team like Utah that would make a deal like that. I could even see, would the Kings, go talk to them about a Lauri Markkanen? I don't know that you would give up Harrison Barnes in that trade, but Markkanen is a much, better natural fit next to a guy like Sabonis than of course Rashawn Holmes is. And even if you kept him on the bench and had him play behind Keegan Murray, you could use him as a 4-5 because of his length and ability to shoot the long ball. So yeah, I think that they're it's interesting what Utah has done. I mean, they've already shown that not only will they blow it up and get 4 first-round picks and a couple of pick swaps for Gobert, but then they were able to flip Beverly and go get another first-round pick, and now they're able to make this move. But it's a move that precipitates more moves. There will be more moves, including potentially Markkanen, which again you're going to get close to a first-round pick, if not a first-round pick for him. Or like what the Kings could offer, they could do expiring contracts and 3 second-round picks because they've got all these second-round picks. Mm-hmm. But they can't really. I mean, I guess you could give away your 27 first-round pick to Utah, which they might be willing to take on. But again, I just think it's interesting because Danny Ainge is doing something, but we'll have to wait 3 years. The teardown is really fun to watch because it's been exciting and oh, look at how much he's getting. And, we watch him squander plenty of picks in Boston. And then, you still have to turn him into, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and all the other things that Danny Ainge was able to do in Boston. But he also made some mistakes along the way.
Yeah, some of the things that we were kind of talking about, and I was debating with Damien, and we agreed, but he pointed out that Danny Ainge just isn't interested in. What I was talking about was, if the Knicks offer was really real, now let's just say they're saying, hey, we'll give you RJ Barrett and 2 unprotected first-round picks and 2 pick swaps or whatever. And Danny Ainge is like, nope, I want 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. He'd rather have the unknown pick as opposed to RJ Barrett. And my argument, and like I said, Dame understands it, is what are the chances that number 23 pick in the year 2027 is better than RJ Barrett? Why not just take RJ Barrett? He's at the very least a solid young player with a chance, as opposed to this random draft pick 5 years from now.
Well, it's because Danny Ainge doesn't want to be good the next 2 years at all. Even Colin Sexton, he puts up numbers and he'll be fun and people will come watch him, but he isn't a winning basketball player as of right now. He hasn't proven that, right? He's a guy who puts up numbers and that's about it. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this, Kenny, a couple of times. we went through all of the first round picks that the Knicks had. They had 7 first round picks, and most of them were these weird, like massive lottery protected picks. A lot of them looked a lot like the Kevin Huerter first rounder that the Kings gave up. A lot of them were top 10, top 14, and like 3 years of protections, and then you might get the pick or it could dissolve into a second round pick. So while it looked like they had this war chest, their war chest had like a bunch of holes in it where stuff is falling out. You're like, is that really a war chest? And like they weren't willing to give up what it sounds like is their own unprotected first round picks. And that's a problem.
I get both sides of the argument completely, but I'm with James in the sense of we know what this draft is, and we know we could see load management of Oklahoma City Thunders and Houston Rockets and potentially Detroit Pistons and Orlando Magics and Utah Jazzes and all of that. And those are for the teams we expect to be bad. Throw a monkey wrench in Dallas. Something, the worst case scenario happens with Dallas. Let's see how quickly they pull the plug on that. Oh, that's all right. We're still looking for that player to get us over the top. It could be the player in this upcoming draft. But the main crux of the point is from that we were talking about earlier was Danny thinks he could do it. Like Danny thinks you mentioned Brown and Tatum. He drafted Marcus Smart too, and Rob Williams, Grant Williams, all these guys. He absolutely believes. Bring those draft picks in here. We're going to be terrible. We'll have the highest picks. We'll add role players with what all of these other teams are sending us, and not in that third year, we'll start to make our ascent back up.
No, I mean in theory, but I mean you have to actually be successful.
But he rebuilt Boston in a year. That's why I think he feels like I did it. I already did it. I could do it again. I had a young coach come in, no experience in the NBA, named Brad Stevens. I got a young coach here in Utah. He's got experience in the NBA, but not as a head coach in Will Hardy. He's literally following the Boston Celtics playbook.
No, I totally get it, but he's one miss away from not building it. And that's all it is. Like, yeah, he's done it before, but like every draft doesn't fall the same way. You don't get the third pick in every draft. You don't get the fourth pick, so you have to get lucky, and that, it's possible that, and then even when you do get lucky with the pick, the guy that you draft has to be great. That's how you dig out of it. The fact that, just looking at OKC, for example, how many first round picks have just they're not there anymore, or they weren't really that great, or, and when you finally do get the first round pick, it's a 24th pick or 28th pick. Like those things they're not that impactful. Now, have they done really well by drafting guys like Josh Giddey and, Shea and, some of the other guys that they've put around him, finding guys like Lou Dort? Yeah, but at the same time, you can't just point at their team and say, okay, that's the one pick that they nailed that put them over the top. And it could be Chet, but, I don't know. Like, you have to wait and see how it works out, because just because you've done it once doesn't mean that you'll have the same exact opportunity the next time around. You could have the third pick or the fourth pick in a 2-man draft. If you get the second pick in this year's draft and you're able to build around Scoot Henderson, that's one thing. Mm-hmm. But if you end up with the fourth pick and like the top 1, 2, 3 guys who could be franchise changers are gone, then maybe your build out doesn't happen nearly as quickly. So, I mean, in theory, it's fine, but I'll point out the one other thing is, number one, Danny Ainge had a bunch of picks and he missed plenty of times, like Aaron Nesmith, Romeo Langford, Peyton Pritchard's okay, he's in the rotation, but, again, like late first-round picks. But on top of that, he's a Boston Celtics. There's a big difference between drawing free agents to Boston to help out and help build your system and put everything together, the Al Horfords or, the glue guys that help finish the thing off, and being in Utah. So, let's see if he can do it in Utah as well, because you're talking about a totally different market that just doesn't have the allure that Boston does.
You're also talking about the... I'm sorry, Dan.
I feel like I backed Danny Ainge too much the last 2 days.
You're also talking about a market, not only free agent, but keeping the teams. I said this. I'll pat myself on the back for this one.
Oh,
I
good.
said about a year and a half ago, Donovan out of there. The reason why they brought D Wade in there was the last gasp attempt to keep him. But I think it was last year. I was like, y'all need to trade him now and get what you can for him.
I think they already traded D-Wade too.
Well, you know that opportunist. He's
Get Donovan to Miami.
He traded himself. He's like, oh, Donovan ain't here no more. I'm gonna go over here. he out. He giving his stakes back in the team. But real quick though, James, I wanna ask you something. And I'm looking. This might take a little time.
Okay.
A little time.
All right, we'll come back.
Yeah.
We'll ask James a question, and we'll turn this into Kings talk because that's what we do, baby. And there's the Kings discussion to be had with not only Donovan Mitchell being traded and what that means for the Utah Jazz. It might be a little spot at the guard position open in the All-Star game. James Ham when we return here on ESPN 1320. Clear.
Mexico wins.
Boo. USA.
These guys are. No, these aren't those guys. I don't want to be disrespecting to them, but
Had to clean the lens there. Sorry.
they weren't far from having me out there.
Yeah. So Boise said, "What GM doesn't miss, James? Every GM misses, but the point is, there's a big difference between missing and just hitting. Like there's a bunch of Davion Mitchell might not be a miss, but he also might not be like a hit. He could be, but he's going to be a solid NBA player. But in order to rebuild a franchise that you tear down to nothing, you have to hit. You have to actually get star level players, especially in a market like Boston where you're not just like a mecca. I mean, especially like Utah where you're not a mecca for free agency. Like it's not about missing all the time. It's if they miss one time in the top 5, that could set them back years. Just like it sets back the Kings years when they miss on Marvin Bagley in the top 5.
The other thing about that though is just like I understand Boise saying GMs miss. I think it's a little it's just a little pie in the sky to be like, oh, Danny Ainge has done it before, he'll do it again. Like the situations are completely different.
Yeah.
He's drafted in completely different spots. So while he's done it before and he gets credit for that, that doesn't mean he's gonna do it again.
Hey, don't come for me like that.
I totally that would be my point. Like, look, there's a
possibility. I understand that. The point I meant was from his line of thinking.
Oh yeah. He feels like
he already did it.
Yeah.
That's all I meant. I don't know if Danny Ainge can do it again, but if I'm Danny Ainge, oh fuck, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all thought I was this whole thing up when I did that thing with Brooklyn, and look what happened.
Well,
I don't know. If he ends up with the 6 pick, if he ends up with the 7 pick, the 8 pick, that ain't turning around your franchise. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. On occasion, you get one of those guys, but that's what it comes down to. The lottery balls have to be they have to bounce your way. I don't know.
That's true.
He can do it though. He absolutely can do it again.
But I get James' points too in that you can't land at 2 or 3 and be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You can't Marvin.
Yeah.
You can't draft Marvin and leave Trey.
Let's just be honest here. The Sacramento Kings have been a playoff team 3 or 4 years in a row if they drafted Luka Doncic. I mean, I'm not inventing the wheel here.
James, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing.
Okay.
All right.
But also with Danny, I hate to say it like this, you need to come across a sucker. Like Billy King was a sucker. That was a ridiculous trade.
That
Philly.
Minnesota deal sure does look like a sucker deal.
Oh, that was the homeboy. That was the homie looking out for the homie.
Oof.
Oh, you mean this year, Minnesota? I thought you meant when they got KG.
No. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
what just happened with
yeah. That's
Rudy
what I'm saying.
Gobert? I mean, that's a
You got to
sucker
find one.
deal.
You got to find one. You got to find somebody thirsty like Philly was to move up and get Markelle Fultz. When Danny knew, I'll give him all the credit in the world for this one. He knew the entire time he was going to get Tatum.
Yeah.
He knew that's who he would have picked number one. And he's like, oh, I know Philly thirsty for Markelle. I can get a couple of assets, move down a couple of spots, and still get the same guy I want. Yeah. So you need some help. You need some help along the way.
And you're 3 years behind or 2 years behind OK City Thunder. I mean, you are. They've already started this path.
Yeah. Who's the furthest behind, James? I said San Antonio. San Antonio hadn't even started yet.
Yeah. But did they get picks? They got picks in the
They
Dejounte
got picks
Murray.
in the deal, but they don't even have a player.
Hang on, guys. We're coming back. Hang on. Kenny literally just had to tell James, stop talking. Because James was obviously hinting he was around some direction that Kenny Caraway was going. And I can't lie, I'm on the edge of my seat for whatever this was. So
see, I'll pull back the curtain a little bit because James is going to say the same thing right now. I'm just setting James up again to say the same thing. So here was the question. And I think I heard Brian Windhorst talking about this and just kind of breaking down how we got here with Cleveland, right? And Cleveland made a lot of good decisions along the way, but there's also a level of fortune that they got along the way as well to get to this spot, right? So he names a couple of different scenarios where Jared Allen, just kind of randomly, the Nets and the Rockets involve them, and they get Jared Allen for nothing. That's Kobe Altman gets credit for that, finding a way to get involved in that. And really, Houston, what are you doing? Like not getting Jared Allen back in that situation and allowing him to go somewhere. That they get credit for that for sure. He turns into an all-star. Then you get a situation where you got Colin Sexton, who unfortunately goes down with an ACL injury. If he doesn't tear his ACL, he definitely plays, and he probably plays well enough where you can't do what you did to him this offseason. So there's that. He'll play well enough where it's like, man, we kind of got to give him this bag a little bit. He's healthy. He's a good ball player. He's showing good signs. Also with that, you wonder if Darius Garland is able to take over the reins the way he did and become an all-star. There's a little bit of fortune with the way that played out with Colin Sexton. The other thing, and Windhorst talks about this, he says, regardless of what they say, he believes they were holding their cap space for LeBron. That they were holding room for LeBron if he wanted to come back. LeBron handles business early and says, no, I'm signing with the Lakers. They're able to move on. Like if LeBron doesn't do that now, sign his extension with the Lakers, and the Cavs really are trying to keep cap space, I don't know if they can say, let's go all in on Donovan Mitchell. You know what I mean? And then last but not least, Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley, a lot of people love Evan Mobley. The Cavs did not tank or try to be bad to get the third pick in that draft. They tanked and tried to be bad to get the first pick in that draft. And they would have taken Cade. If they had the second pick in that draft, maybe they take Evan Mobley, but a lot of people believe Houston should have took Evan Mobley. They had two teams pass on the guy that they really wanted and really changed the fortunes of that team. And they were able to get Evan Mobley. And I said that was last, but this isn't last. This is last. The Knicks. That was the Knicks deal to have. And they didn't add the extra pick that Danny Ainge wanted, and they fell out, and it allowed the Cavs to step in. I say all this to say, a lot of people compare the Cavs. Oh, they rebuild in 3 years, and look at the Kings. They're still trying to do it. They should have just tore down like the Cavs did. And the Cavs did a great job. Kobe Altman did a great job with what he was doing. There's also a level of fortune that came into that as well when you talk about rebuilding teams. And shout out to the Cavs and everybody who believes they did their thing, but you also need some good luck along the way as well.
Yeah, and I think what I said to like sort of respond to that was, I mean, you're right. If you look, just backtrack if you're the Kings in 2017, they actually in 2016 they tanked their roster. They trade DeMarcus Cousins at the deadline. They waive Matt Barnes. They trade Omri Caspi. Rudy Gay got hurt. They just like gave up everybody in the offseason. They reset. They started out with what was it? It was 3 first-round picks, an early second-round pick in Frank Mason, and they got Bogdan Bogdanovic to come overseas. So they had 5 rookies on the roster. It was a mess, but an intentional mess. So they were bad the next year, and they weren't even so bad that they didn't actually get it. They were like the 7th or 8th pick again that year and moved up to number 2. We'll get to this is the point that I was making. It's that when you're in the top 5, when you're in the top 2, you can't miss. And if the Kings would have drafted Luka, and I know that it's such a bitter thing for everyone in Sacramento to hear, but the Sacramento Kings would be 5 years along in their rebuild. They would be a perennial playoff team right now. And people can argue with me if they want, but that's just like Dallas is a perennial playoff team, and their roster is not good at all still. Like the Kings had a better roster to build around. They could have done something, and that's where like every single one of these picks matters so much. Again, Houston, we all think that Houston's going to flip this thing around. They're trying to rebuild, and they're trying to go bad so they can get good really quick. And then, they pass on Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley, to me, was the second best player in that draft, and I don't even think it was close. Now, Green might be phenomenal, but at the same time, a revolutionary big like Evan Mobley, like he can be part of a championship team, and it's possible that Green can too, but like I would choose the big man in that situation every step of the way. I would choose Mobley in that situation. And so, yeah, the Cavs did get lucky, but I mean, I think sometimes it's about making your own luck, and the Kings have found ways to not make their own luck multiple times.
Can I ask him a question real quick, Damien?
You may not.
Marvin Bagley. If people talk about Evan Mobley, I think Evan Mobley is a phenomenal player. I think he's going to end up being better than Marvin Bagley projected to be. But he went 15-8 this year. Marvin Bagley, his rookie year, went 14-7. It's not like he was 9-3. Like Marvin Bagley was really good. If he's able to stay healthy, do you think they make the playoffs before now?
Maybe. I mean, I've been the one
projection, like not like, oh, he's a superstar, but 14 turns to 16, 16 turns to 17, moderate projection. You think the playoffs?
Yeah. I mean, my problem has always been, it's not just that Marvin was always hurt. It was that he never played more than 20 games into a season, 20 games straight in a season until I think one time he had played 20 straight games. And I think his longest was like 23 or 24, and it was in his last season with the Kings. It was that every single time he started to get some sort of flow and chemistry and start building on something, he would get hurt, then he would come back, and then he'd get hurt again, and then he'd come back, and then he'd get hurt again. You can't grow as a basketball player if you're not on the court for long stretches. And, there's you can miss a game here and a game there, but it was never that. It was missing 8 games or 15 games or 20 games. And it just always like interrupted the development of Marvin Bagley. And I still think that there's
if he stays healthy, does he grow?
I would hope so, but we're gonna have to see because it's sort of like it's an untested thing. Like does winning cure all in Sacramento? I don't know because they don't ever win. So yeah, I would like to hope that, but at the same time, like Marvin Bagley has to show that he can play like 70 games. How we just start 70? Just miss 12. But those 12, like in his, like unfortunately for him, they would come in like 3-4 game stretches, like right at the wrong spot where he started to grow, started to develop his role, and then boom, he'd be out. Like it's always worked out that way. So like, look, I hope that he can. I hope that he can put things together and he can develop in Detroit because it's not like any of us here in Sacramento have anything against him. It's just that, you missed. And that's the hard, reality of it. I mean, Luka Doncic is a superstar. Whether you love everything about his game or not, he's a superstar. And you drafted a guy that 4 years later wasn't on your roster.
You talked about relying on kind of things going your way in getting lucky if you're Sacramento. Well, San Antonio's looking to get to the top of that draft. The Utah Jazz are looking to get to the top of that draft. That's two teams that were in the top 10 last year. What, in your mind, does that mean for Sacramento heading into this season when you potentially have, I mean, Utah, San Antonio, I don't think there's any doubt about what they're doing. I mean, Houston's trying to grow, whether they're trying to grow this year or not. That's another story. Oklahoma City, their season just got blown up a couple of days ago. That's 4 teams in the Western Conference alone that aren't expected to be a part of really much. They're just taking part in the regular season because they're contractually obligated to, but they're not expected to do anything. So what does that mean for Sacramento?
I think this is the toughest thing ever, because what it means is that if you somehow don't make the playoffs this year, when you were like, that means that you were 11 out of 11. Like, because you got 4 teams that don't care.
Yeah.
You got 4 teams that don't care at all. And if you can't be better than one other team just to make the play-in, then, like, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Like, what exactly happened here? And that's why, like, push the button to, if there is a move that puts you over the top, like, you don't, the one good thing that if you're looking at San Antonio, Oklahoma, the group of teams that we're talking about, Houston and now Utah, most of those teams aren't even looking at next season either. Mm-hmm. So there's potential for you to grow, but you can't just fall. You can't move 2 steps ahead to fall 5 steps behind 2 years from now, 3 years from now. So it's always going to be a balancing act. Like if you're a team like the Kings, and they have to be aggressive. They have to continuously look to take that one big extra push that might get you there. Mm-hmm. Because it's got to be something that not only does it catapult you into the discussion of like the 6 or the 7 seed where you're kind of safe, but it catapults you into what does that look like the next year and the year after that, where you're actually starting to build towards something. Because just making the playoffs once, making the playoffs twice, that shouldn't be the goal. It should be that, like, if you think you've got something here with De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis, it's not like a 2-year experiment. You're hoping that you have something for the next, 8 years. That's what you're hoping for. Because even then, those guys aren't that old. You're talking about like a 33-year-old Domantas Sabonis, 32-year-old De'Aaron Fox. Like that's where you get to a point where you're a seasoned playoff team and you're competing, and you might have a shot if you're able to add the pieces that work out. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting place that the Kings are in, and we can tie it back into, again, Jaden Ivey versus Keegan Murray. Like, do you go ceiling? Do you go best player available? Do you go, most NBA ready? Like, all of these things play into like the grand scheme of things, because you aren't talking about checkers. You're talking about chess, and in most areas of the NBA, you're talking about like 3-dimensional chess. You're talking about chess that is so advanced that you have to not just look at today. You can't just look at next season. You can't look at whether you've got the money to free up to sign Domantas Sabonis in 2 years. You have to look at what all of these things mean 3, 4, 5 years down the line, and what all these other teams are doing, what that impacts what you're doing. Like, even right now, you're looking at the Utah Jazz. They're going to continue to blow this thing up. And where do those players lie? Where do they go? Where does Bojan Bogdanovic go? Or Mike Conley? Or who else do they got? Jordan Clarkson. Like, what if one of those guys ends up on the Lakers or the Portland Trailblazers? Like, that's what you have to hope doesn't happen right now. Or what if one of them goes to Minnesota or New Orleans? These are teams you're trying to compete with. Like, how do you get in on some of that action? How do you not fall further behind? How do you be a team that catapults yourself up and takes advantage of a situation where a team is giving up too much or is folding up shop, like what we're seeing in Utah? It's like really a a crazy balancing act, but you got to hope that you're lucky, and you got to hope that someone else doesn't make some gigantic move here that makes them better than you. And we could even say, like last week, the Pat Beverly move that made the Lakers a better team. Like, you don't have to love Pat Bev, or we can make him fun of the Pat Bev and Russ Westbrook thing all you want. You can say, oh, he's old, or oh, so and so picked on him in the playoffs. Pat Bev made that team better, and that's all. Like at the end of the day, that's a team that you're competing with for one of those final playoff spots that just got better. Now you need to make sure you're getting better as well.
Utah still blowing that thing up like the people who blew up Arco Arena. They still got.
Oh, did you see the video of that?
Hey, hey, look, check this out though, James. Because I was thinking about this whole thing last night, and I was, thinking about it for like a King's angle and things of that nature. And I don't know. You tell me if I'm wrong here, but the Kings, people were going crazy over what Cleveland did, and rightfully so, because they earned it. They got a guy like Donovan Mitchell, but I don't know, Monty McNair, Sacramento Kings, did they have a little Cleveland light before Cleveland? And I say that because you got your guy in De'Aaron Fox, right? That's your Darius Garland, so to speak. But you had your draft pick in Tyrese Halliburton, which is a lot of people thought Colin Sexton was a guy that you could build around. They made that move to go get the big established guy in Sabonis. And that's the same thing that Cleveland just did with Donovan. Donovan's a notch above Sabonis, but still, Sabonis is a two-time All-Star. Also, they talk about Evan Mobley. You hopefully, I don't know. We haven't seen him play an NBA game yet, but hopefully you got that in Keegan Murray. One thing they're missing is a Jared Allen type. But I was just thinking about it because, so many people are talking about, oh, look at Cleveland. They built so quick or whatever. Well, I feel like Monty has done a pretty good job here using draft picks, using trades and assets to put this team in the right direction, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, they're in the right direction. You're just going to worry about the ceiling of the team. I mean, and did they do enough? I mean, that's going to be the question. And I'm not going to say that I think that they didn't do enough at this point. Like, I think that they did a lot. And you replace 3 rotational players. You put 3 new rotational players and you lost 1. That's how I look at their offseason. And I think that that's good, especially for a team like the Kings. I think that your bench is better. I think you're deeper. But you do have to find a way to keep pushing. And, Cleveland can be like a team that you look at and say, hey, this made a lot of sense. They did this, this, and this. But, again, we talk about the draft, right? So let's just look at the 2 drafts that you brought up there. Like the Evan Mobley draft at number 3 and Keegan Murray at number 4. Mm-hmm. Like that's a big leap that Keegan Murray, like, to get to the prospect level, like it's difficult. Like, he might put up better stats but I think you still, like, if you look at those two drafts, you would take Evan Mobley over Keegan Murray. So, like, I don't want to compare him, like, directly. Again, I think that De'Aaron Fox is a better player than Garland. That's just my own personal point of view. I think as of today, they don't have a player like Sabonis. And even, like, right now, they don't have a player like Harrison Barnes. But what they do have is a lot of really, really good young talent. And if that team grows together and stays together, like, they're going to be wicked good. Especially if you look at the way the salary cap's going to go up and the way that they should be able to retain a good portion of those players because of contracts like the one that Mitchell already has. The fact that they made that trade and they didn't give up Kevin Love's $28 million salary. Yeah. So they still have, like, a major bullet in the chamber that they can go out and do. And, again, like, if the Kings, things are going south for the Kings and things are going right for the Cleveland Cavaliers 40 games into the season, I certainly could see a Harrison Barnes for Kevin Love and they give up a first-round pick if they have any first-round picks left to give up. Like, those are things where you could kind of see something in the future that would make sense because, like, a Harrison Barnes could really help that team get over the hump.
I guess we're just going to ignore. I proposed that deal earlier today. That's fine. No, that's fine. We just.
I'm the only one that doesn't try and trade Harrison out of here. Harrison, I'm the only one that loves you.
No, I like Harrison too, but like at a certain point, Harrison wants to play for a winner. Kings aren't a winner. He's going to go find a winner.
I just want to get Kevin Love on the Kings to infuriate everybody. That's why I proposed it.
I agreed with you when you originally made that, by the way. I was like, yeah, I don't have a problem with Kevin Love. And they threw tomatoes at us like that guy on Twitter earlier. Did you see that? Did you see they smacked that dude with tomatoes who was doing a comedy show?
I didn't, but that's probably why that tomato truck spilled over in Vacaville. It was on its way to us for them Kevin Love takes. Let me ask you both a quick question, because I think about this often. It feels like the Knicks were in a rush to show their fan base. We tried. Look what we did. We attempted to move R.J. Barrett. We attempted to move Obi Toppin and Mitchell Robinson. Look at this deal we put together. And then we just kind of like go about life like, oh, okay, yeah, well, the deal didn't get done. I'm going to ask you both. Are there ramifications when stuff like that becomes public in that way? Because I don't believe anyone thinks that came from anybody other than the New York Knicks. So the New York Knicks have put out there the guy that they just signed to a $100 million extension. They did try to trade first, but couldn't. They tried to trade Obi Toppin. They tried to trade Mitchell Robinson. And those guys are just supposed to go back to the New York Knicks. Like, it's kind of what we were talking about with KD and Steve Nash earlier. These guys are just supposed to go back to the Knicks, and y'all don't love me, but I got to play here. Like, are there any potential ramifications for that?
Sure, I think there are. But, at some point, it's business, baby. Never personal.
I think about the brief moment, the Lakers and the Bulls thing, the Kobe Bryant and the Bulls thing. Remember what happened to that? Remember what happened to that Bulls team? Oh, they disintegrated when they thought they were all being traded. That team went to hell for a few weeks.
Yeah, I think it definitely can play a factor on certain teams and certain locker rooms, certain players. We'll see what RJ's made of. I mean, they just gave RJ $170 million reasons to be like, don't worry.
Did they give him that many? I don't think it was that many, was it?
Maybe it was 120 or something.
120. Yeah, they said it might be the figure that all of the other guys are looking at now because of the way the cap is supposed to go up. Yeah, I mean, look, it always feels like the Knicks have some excuse for why they aren't great. And, just look at their offseason. If you would have taken and put Donovan Mitchell on that team, everyone would have been like, oh, look at what they built. Like, they're the next team. And you sit there and you get involved in a deal and you just don't pull the trigger on that one, whether it's a player or whether it's an extra pick or whether it's a pick swap. And at the end of the day, like, this is about winning basketball games. And like I said it the other day, the Knicks always, to me, for the last 2 decades, they feel like that moment in Spaceballs where they thought they caught them. They thought they caught the good guys and they had them trapped and they all turned around and they were all stunt doubles. And it just, like, to me, like the Knicks always look like a group of stunt doubles for what should be great players. So instead of Donovan Mitchell, you got some nice players, but they're not, they're not Donovan Mitchell. And that's what you're going to keep looking at. Like, you're the Knicks. Like, how can you not draw big time talent? How can you not make that one move that just like secures yourself as a top tier team? And like, Donovan Mitchell is now in the Eastern Conference. He's going to be there all day long. And you're going to see him all season long and be reminded about how you could have done something and you didn't.
They'll get Zion in 2 years.
And he'll get hurt that year, and he'll be the next Amari Stoudemire.
That's enough, James. That's the one next bit of slander we've got here.
It's time to leave. It's just time to go. This show
time
is
has
over.
come.
I'm going to go watch Serena Williams play